Okay, so we're continuing. This is second shir in Sfartim Lachem Mochurat Shabbat about the Sfirat HaOmer. So we talked last time about Chipazon and about Yetzias Mitzrayim as Hashem coming out from something inside to the outside, from Kedusha to Klipa, into the Klipa of Mitzrayim. And then we said that that's different than Vayered Hashem, which is coming down through the world, from Atilus down to, so it's into a place that's not necessarily less holy, but with less consciousness that there's only Hashem. And this is the difference, he said, this is the Ratzo Vashov between Pesach and Shavuos. That Pesach is Ratzo, and that's the whole thing of Chipazon, that time stood still. And Shavuos, the name itself means weeks, is related to time, and it's putting time in a serene way, like B'Yishuv Hadat. How would you say Yishuv Hadat? I forgot. I used to have a word for it.
A relaxed mind.
It's more than that. It's like presence of mind, but
settled mind.
Settled mind, yeah. So that's the difference between Pesach and Shavuos. And again, the Pesach is Hashem revealing Himself suddenly, and Shavuos is a long process of bringing the lights down into the vessels. And this all started from his novel interpretation that Sphira comes from light. That the point of Sphira Sa'omer is to add light. We said this is the opposite from how his Rebbe himself explained it differently. His Rebbe was Menachem Mendel Vitebsk. He in Priya Haaretz, he explains that it's all like the Zohar. The Zohar goes in the direction of the woman who's sitting seven Shiva Nikim. Okay. כמו שכתוב וירד השם על הר סיני, המשכה מלמעלה למטה. Okay. והנה כתיב, right? So, you see where we are? We're about in the middle of the left column. והנה כתיב. It's the first word in the line. We go down about 20 lines.
Okay.
והנה כתיב, למען תזכור את יום צאתך מארץ מצרים כל ימי חייך. It says you should, this is so that you, all of this is in order that you can remember that the day that you left Egypt. Here it says צאתך מארץ מצרים. It's a little bit different than יציאת מצרים. כמאמר הז"ל, בכל דור ודור, that in every generation a person should feel that his generation left Egypt. שצריך להיות בכל יום בחינת יציאת מצרים. Every day should include
a new coming out.
A feeling of coming out of Egypt. והיינו בקריאת שמע ואהבת. And when do we do this? This is when we say ואהבת in Kriyas Shema, and we end אני השם אלוקיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם. In the next parsha, we end I am Hashem your God who took you out of Egypt. ובפרט מן ברוך שאמר את קריאת שמע הוא הכנה שיבוא לבחינת יציאת מצרים ואהבת. And the main thing about יציאת מצרים in everyday life is that a person comes out of the Mitzrayim of not being able, the straits of not being able to connect to Hashem, to love Hashem. Instead, we love the physical world. We love the what our eyes see, what the senses feel. והיינו כשהתבונן איך שכל צבא השמיים לך משתחווים, והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול, והחיות זעות מכיל כיסא, נוסעות ומנוסעות עם כיסא, אלף אלפים ובור ובן ישמשוני, וכולם הם בחינת ביטול תמיד. So what we read in the preparation for Kriyas Shema is all the description of the heavenly court, and we see that everything that has clear sight of God is entirely nullified towards Him. And so we learn from that. This is all in order to tell us about His power, about His might, וכבוד הדר מלכותו, and the glory of his kingdom, שהוא בחינת הדר מלכותו שכולם בטלים לגביו. And what does it all mean? It's all about the fact that they are nullified before Hashem. And that main thing of being nullified. Being nullified is to be free. ונמשך להם הביטול על ידי שמשיגים כי מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים. And they receive what the bittul comes from is from an understanding that Hashem's kingdom includes everything, including my world. Oh, so that's the main thing here. So he's talking here about what in the Zohar is called chokhmah ilah, chokhmah tata. That there's the higher wisdom, supernal wisdom, and lower wisdom. Higher wisdom is what we call wisdom, chokhmah, bittul. And the lower wisdom is what we call malchus. So many times it's called chokhmah barosh, chokhmah basof. That kingdom requires a special type of wisdom. To say it another way, that the true king is somebody who has enough bittul to have only Hashem above him. A real king, to really run a kingdom, you have to feel obligated to only one. The moment you feel obligated to something else, you won't run it well. You'll make all the mistakes in the world. The same thing that's true by a king is true by every person's life. That if you feel obligated to other things apart than to Hashem, you won't run your life correctly. You also won't be a good king. Of course. And why do you do that? Ani avaya. Why? Because ani avaya. If you base it only on the fact that on my feelings towards somebody, so sometimes I don't love somebody. But, or sometimes I mamish hate them, I can't stand them, and so on. But if I'm able to nullify myself towards Hashem, ani avaya, that's at the end of the pasuk that we just read this Shabbos, then the love is everlasting, and it's with everybody. So it's like saying that chokhmah barosh is chokhmah in the head. If you want to understand things, you have to have bittul. If you want to bring the crown down, you have to have bittul. If you want to see beyond what the senses see, you have to have bittul.
The first step to knowing is to know that you don't know.
Right. If you want to run something, meaning to organize it, to operate it, to be responsible for it in the right way, that's malchus, you also need bittul. That's chokhmah basof. And that's called sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila. It's a little bit different than the chokhmah above, because the chokhmah above is to reveal something new. And the chokhmah above, the chokhmah in the intellect, is always in order to reveal something new.
All of chokhmah is malchus.
Why?
The Indian of chokhmah is malchus. So you just say
It's called Abba Yasad Brata.
when you said it's chokhmah law, why is it not chokhmah tato? Is not malchus?
Malchus is called chokhmah tata, but it's called.
Why not chokhmah? Why not chokhmah law?
Because there is chokhmah ilah. There is an intellectual faculty where chokhmah is stronger. There's real selflessness. The king can't afford to have complete selflessness. It's not what he seeks to be, because he can't disappear. He has to. It's like melech shemachal al kvodo and kvodo malchul. That a king cannot afford to give up his own being, his kavod, his honor, as it were. But what it means by honor is the honor of the malchus, not he himself. So there's a measure always of yesh there. There's always some kind of yeshut there. But that's supposed to be the holy yeshut. How does it become holy? Because it has chokhmah also. The chokhmah there is en ma'alav ela Hashem elokav, that the only thing above him is Hashem, is God. So again, this is true by a kingdom. At any scale that you look at it, it's the same way. Whether I look at my life or I look at 100 billion people, it's all the same. It works the same way. It's just more complex. I can't run 100 billion people. Maybe I can run one person. Maybe I can run my house. But that's as far as my abilities carry me. But it works the same way in the sense that I still have to have chokhmah. I still have to have. That's why Shlomo was the closest thing to Mashiach. Because when Hashem said to him in his dream in Givon, when he was only 12 years old, he said to him, you can ask for anything you want. So instead of asking for wealth, most people think you run a country by having a good economy. Sometimes there is, here, you had the best economy in the world, maybe one of the best, and in 1 month it collapses. So more wealth is not necessarily going to help you so much. What really helps you is chokhmah. And that's what Shlomo asked for in Givon, and Hashem said to him, because you asked for chokhmah, I'll also give you wealth. Said it, but it's a pal yoytze. It's almost like he's telling him, It's not that I have to give you a special blessing now also for wealth. The truth is that if you have wisdom, if you have this nullification, you're going to be wealthy anyway. And it's almost a given. וזהו להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו, and so on, שכולם בטלים לגביו ממש, ונמשך להם הביטוי על ידי שמשיגים כמלכותך, מלכות כל עולמים, Hashem's kingdom spans all worlds, פירוש מלכותך שחיות כל העולמות אינו אלא מבחינת מלכותך, הערת שמו בלבד, לא כמו שהנשמה מחיית הגוף, שעצמיות חיות הנשמה מלובש בתוך הגוף ממש, אבל מהותו ועצמותו רם ומתנשא. So, the other meaning of it is, as we've seen throughout the Alter Rebbe's writings, is that this is also talking about Memalu Kol Almin, about the light that fills all worlds. And here he says, not to understand that the Etzim is mislabesh inside the worlds, because the Etzim is not, but, meaning the Etzim is here, it's present, it's just not in a form of Islabshus. It's not something that can be sensed, it's not something that can be understood. But it's like the soul again, it's what we call the Malchus is the part of Hashem's essence that could come down and be felt in the world. ואין שום דבר מלבישו כלל, היה הווה ויהיה בלי שינוי כלל, כמו שכתוב, אני השם לא שניתי, and the etzem itself remains imbued, unattached, if you want. Oh, that's a good question. Usually when we say Shechina, we mean Malchus. We mean some form of Islapshus. It's a few times it's something a little bit different, but in general, Shechina just means Memale. So what he means is the Sovev. He means the part of Hashem that doesn't enclose in the world. Again, it's just not to make the mistake that somehow it's not here. Everything is here. It's just that part of it is mislavish and part of it is not. And that part that's not remains without change. Because this is the world of change. So if it's not mislavish here, if it's not contained within this reality, so it doesn't experience change. As it says, Ani Havai lo shaniti, I Hashem have not changed. He was talking about the Sovev. Ata hu kodem shenivra olam, v'ata hu lachar shenivra olam. He's before the world, he's after the world. Bli shum shinui klal, ve'en shum davar mechaser u'mastir negdo, ela rak ha'arat shem kvod malchuto bilvad, zeu chayut v'itavut kol olamot. And there's nothing that conceals Hashem's essence also. And there's only...
And you already said yesterday that there's no time as far as Hashem is concerned. So how do you say he was the same before and the same after? There's no time.
That's a way of saying that he's timeless. That before and after doesn't mean anything. Because you can't say before and after are not the same, because at least in terms of your consciousness of time, you must have changed. So our point of view is a time point of view. By the way, the neshamos always have a time point of view. It's not that somehow after a person passes away, so he loses time. He loses time the way we have it here. It doesn't pass at the same speed. It means something else maybe, but there's still time. Even in Atzilus, there's still Sedel Zemanim. There's still time. So time is like an attribute of souls. It's something that has to do with being a soul. In godliness, there is no passage of time. There's no time at all.
Souls know when it's Rosh Hashanah.
Can exactly. That's what it says. That every Shabbos, even somebody who's in Gehenom gets a day off, whatever that means. But it's sort of like we get a day off from our toil. We don't have to work. וזהו מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, היינו שכל עולמים, אף שהן אלף אלפים וריבו רבבן. So this is what it means, that your kingdom is the kingdom of all worlds, meaning that all the worlds, even though there are thousands and thousands and millions of them and so on, as it says, Hayesh mispar ligdudav, the Navi asks, is there a number to his cohorts? Okay. And it says that from the earth to, this is an interesting example of Chazal using the science in their time. that the Babylonians had this. Even if this is not from the Babylonians, I think this is from the Greeks already. That from the earth to the bottom of the what they called the sphere of the moon was 500 years. And that was the distance it would take you to walk it. 500 years. It's probably pretty close. It's probably pretty close, by the way. Yeah. Because they knew the numbers pretty well. So when they say Tak Shana, they mean 500 years of walking. And it's something like 250,000 kilometers. So to walk, how much does it come out to? If you divide by 1,000, you would get 250. So it's 500 kilometers per year. So it's about what a person probably walk faster than that. I might not have the run. Maybe I don't have the right number. Maybe it's 250,000 miles. Not sure. Anyway, they're in the ballpark. In Kolze, so Chazal didn't have a problem using this number because they said, what is this trying to say? It's trying to say that there's a tremendous distance here. It's far. It's not. They weren't trying to say, is it this or is it not that? That wasn't important to them. What was important for them was to understand the change in consciousness that you would have to go through to live 500 years. It's not something that a human being can do. So, in a certain sense, it's that even to reach the lowest level of the Shemaim, of what we call something that begins to understand godliness, and the moon being the lowest sphere, the lowest level of understanding of godliness in the Shemaim, you have to somehow live 500 years. It's something. It's like trying to get into your head in a metaphoric way that to understand godliness requires something that's superhuman. You have to depart the human body. You can't be in the human body the regular way in order to understand godliness. And that's even just the lowest sphere, the moon. Again, the moon representing the lowest level of not being mortal, of not being temporal, of not being locked into our reality. Nonetheless, even though there's so much of these worlds, that even the moon is considered inside the Memale. He's still inside the Memale. All the Tzva Shemaim, they're still inside the Memale. They're not the Soviv yet.
It's a tip-tip of the whole universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's our back garden.
Okay. And when you understand how big this garden is, the backyard, and then you look at and yet all this is still Memale. It doesn't matter how far you go. You go 100 million light years. Doesn't matter. It's all the same Memale. It's still in the same terms of what we understand. By the way, in the picture of Chazal, I wouldn't make the statement I just made. Meaning, I don't think that they meant to say that if you went 100 million light years, you would be in the Memale. I think what their picture is that the moment you leave the ninth sphere, that's not so far away, then you do enter into a different reality. That's in their picture of the world. How to translate that exactly into distances, I don't know. But certainly they say that after the ninth sphere, there's a different conception of Hashem. That's exactly what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to see. And Hashem said to him, you're locked into human reality right now, and you can only see my backside. To see my backside is to see, as it's explained in Alter Rebbe explains it himself, that it means to see how the world runs physically, but not to be able to yet understand how it runs outside of physicality, meaning how it would be in the Soviv, which is a different conception altogether. As great as all these heavens are, they're still within the Memale. They're nothing compared. They're not nothing, but they're not. There's no exchange rate. They're not commensurate relative to the Ein Sof. Shehu b'chinat Ein Sof mamash. His light, his real light, that's already Ein Sof. וכנודע שאפילו אחד לגבי ריבו רבבן יש לו ערך, שהוא חלק קטן ממנו. We say 1 to 1,000,000, or here in this case it's 1 to 10,000,000, it's still something. You can't say it's nothing. אבל ריבו רבבן לגבי בלי גבול, בבחינת אינסוף ממש אין ערך כלל. But if you take the 10,000,000 and you compare it to infinity, it's nothing at all. It's again, not that it's nothing, it has no
meaning.
En aroch means you have to take a quantum, you have to take a leap of consciousness to get from one to the other. It's not commensurate. I don't know how to say it better. There's no comparison.
No, there's no comparator.
Okay.
There's no mechanism by which
you can't translate from one to the other. That's what you call an exchange rate. The exchange rate was a brilliant. The first time I heard something that was half spiritual was from the Rosh Yeshiva, the Nifter Rosh Yeshiva of Esha Torah. I don't know how I got that tape. I got it when I was 15. Yeah, and it was his. I think it's a class he gave many times. It was part of the discovery thing, I think. Although I'm not sure there was discovery when I was 16. Maybe it was an earlier incarnation. And he talked about, I guess he took it from the Ramchal. I've never been able to find where it's from. But it sounds like the Ramchal. Ramchal does things like that. Maybe the Maharal. But it sounds like more the Ramchal. That there are levels of incommensurate importance in life. So the first thing that people find important is money. And then he says, but then there's power. And says there's no exchange rate. There's no amount of money. It's a pasuk in Mishlei actually. Kol asher yesh leish yiten be'ad nafsho. So there's two meanings of nafsho. Nafsho in the Tanya he says he'll give everything he has to save his life. But in Mishlei the pshat is usually nafsho for his power. I mean, a person will give up all his money, everything that he's amassed to get power. And then he said, but after power, there's family. That's already a question about people who want power. Are they really... you had a whole... maybe he put family first and then power. I don't remember. He had 5 levels, so it was very nice. I don't remember what the next 2 levels were. But his claim was that the highest level is serving Hashem. And that there's nothing that's worth that. So what it helped is young people who think that the world is very limited, and human experience is very limited. Suddenly opened them up to maybe there's a hierarchy of values that I'm not aware of. And it's a very, very smart class that he gave to people. So he invented this idea of an exchange rate. And you can't go to the bank and exchange money for power. And you can't go to the bank and exchange power for family. There's no amount will ever... So I like that idea of an exchange rate. Ein aroch. Ein aroch is the chush of Kabbalah. Kabbalah is all about ein aroch. The word that Rav Chaim Vital uses more than any other word is ein aroch. ועל ידי שמשיגים את כל הנ"ל, על ידי זה הם בבחינת ביטול תמיד, ועל ידי, and these higher, or these beings that we mentioned from Baruch She'amar until after Kriyas Shema, when we describe the whole heavenly court and so on, they grasp how incommensurate the Ein Sof is relative to them, and therefore they're always in a state of bittul. ועל ידי ההתבוננות הנ"ל בעומק הדעת, אזי ממילא יבוא לבחינת רצו בקריאת שמע. So this is what causes the person to go into a state of ratzo, of ascending from below to above in Kriyas Shema, and to reach the level of Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, to be able to love Hashem your God bechol levacha, with all your heart. And that's what it means לצאת מן המצרים וגבולים שכולם הם בבחינת גבול. And this is what it means that a person is able to get out of all the straits and all the limits that he has in his life. And the limits are all about perceiving godliness. And this is כמו מהלך תק שנה, הן בגשמיות, הן ברוחניות. And it's compared, that's why the Chazal compared it. They use this idea from, I guess, the Greek science, that there's 500 years of walking distance between us and the lowest sphere being the moon. They meant it both physically and spiritually. Why? כי הוא בבחינת מיצר וגבול המכסים ומסתרים להיות לנראה, ליש ודבר בפני עצמו, רק לדופקה בו, שהוא בלי גבול מבחינת אינסוף ממש. That's the distance that a person has to cover in order to come out of his usual way of seeing the world, which is all about the limited reality, the money, the health, all these things, in order to see something spiritual, in order to see the Ein Sof itself, to see the infinite himself. This is what it means that a person has to come out of Egypt every day. And that's why Paro is reported to have said in Egypt, I don't know Havaya, I don't know Hashem's special name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Sheshem Havaya, Shu Haya Ove V'yeh, Bli Shinui, who is timeless, he's above time, Lo Yadati, this I can't know. Can't know, he means I can't know internally. I can't perceive it. All I know is Rak Shem Elokim. All I can know is the name of God that's called Elokim. HaMechaseh u'mastir liot yesh v'davar b'fnei atzmo dafka. And that's the concealment. That's how Hashem appears in this world, through Elokim, through nature, through our physical being, and so on. This, he said, this I can perceive. And that's why in Kabbalah, the Arizal explains that the whole experience of being in Mitzrayim and being in Egypt was that consciousness was in exile. In the same way that we are today, there's no difference. That when I wake up in the morning, my consciousness is in exile, because the first thing I think about is my sore throat. And not the first thing I think about is I can increase godliness in the world today, because that's how it is. וזהו לא ידעתי את הוויה שהדת היה בחינת גלות, וזהו שחותם בקריאת שמע, אני השם אלוקיכם, אשר הוצאתי, אני הוויה דווקא. So that's why it ends Kriyas Shema with I am Hashem your God. Why? Because the whole point is to get the consciousness that Havaya is God, that Havaya is Elokim, that they're the same thing, that Elokim is only concealing Havaya. So we've seen most of this before. There's nothing new here. What we need to get to now is the whole point of the Sphira here, of the Omer. How much time do we have? What time is it? 10 to 10.
Maybe Thursday we'll learn.
So, yeah. So Thursday we'll learn again, whoever's watching and wants to join.
But I got the army.
Okay, so you want to learn earlier?
Yes.
At 9?
9:15.
9:15 Israel time, next time. Okay. God willing, on Thursday.
Okay. So my suggestion